Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, October the 20th, 2020. It is currently 9:21 a.m. Central Time, and I'm here at Victory Baptist Church. And, well, I have a news article in front of me, and I kept debating with myself, do I turn on the microphone this morning and talk about this? This is not really kind of in the normal things that we talk about. However, I've always wanted to ensure that this podcast gives me the ability to talk about anything that I think is important and talk about anything that I want. Obviously, we look at things from a theological perspective, and I think one of the very important things about having a theological perspective is that you look at everything that's happening in your world. You keep up with everything going on in your world. You are aware of everything going on in your world. However, you just look at it from a theological perspective. And a theological perspective doesn't mean you simply look at it and quote a Bible verse. That's not necessarily proves a theological perspective. It just means the way we look at things. We are looking at things with a biblical understanding of the nature of man, a correct understanding of God, and we look at things with a perspective of the sanctity of human life. There's just a theological perspective brings in a lot of very specific ideas that we use as a filter in which we view everything else. It's almost like I have a pair of glasses here in front of me. You hear me put them on all the time when I get ready to read something, and then you hear me take them off because I only need them for reading. Yes, that's frustrating. Okay, but that's a whole different story. But think of a theological perspective as a pair of glasses. And I'm getting ready to look at world events, what's happening in the news, what's going on, whether it's political, whether it's cultural, whatever the case may be. And I put on a pair of glasses. And that pair of glasses is my theological filter, my theological perspective. And everyone has a pair of glasses. They have a worldview. They have a perspective. And that's how they see things. That's how they interpret things. I try to interpret things from a theological perspective, and that's why this podcast is called Theology Central. But that means I can talk about anything. I just do so from a theological perspective. I hope that makes sense, because we are taking a kind of a little detour, but I saw this. This is what happened. I was listening to music, and I had my headphones on, and whenever I get notifications, it lowers the volume of the music, which sometimes irritates me to no end because, well, you're interrupting my music. But my music kind of got muted a little bit. So I walked over to the iPad, and I looked down, and I'm like, oh, wait, what does that say? I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, let me read that again. So I had to, I stopped everything, took off the headphones, pulled down the notifications, and I looked, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay. Now, how do I take this? I probably need to do some additional research, and I need to ensure that I think about this correctly, logically, I get all the facts. But I knew that it was significant enough that I should at least start thinking about it. And I shared it with a number of people, and nobody seemed to really care. Nobody really said anything. No one gave any indication that it was even a significant headline, that no one gave any indication that they even cared. And which then started making me think, well, why not? Why not? So I want to start from this perspective, because I think this is an interesting way to look at this. Sometimes it's extremely interesting to see what things actually matters to people, right? I find it fascinating, especially right now as we're fast approaching an election. When you hear the issues that people are supposedly the things that they get upset about, the things that people are bothered by, the things that they think are so important on, determining who the next president is. Sometimes it's just interesting to look at, like, okay, so what's the issue for you? What's the big issue for you? And it's like some people have these specific issues, but then they don't seem to expand. They don't seem to allow those issues to really help them view to view the world at large. Let me try to offer an example where this will make sense with where I'm going here. For a very long time, Christians, evangelical Christians, always screamed that the most important issue, The most important issue when it comes to voting for a president is the subject of abortion, because we are pro-life, because we believe in the sanctity of life. Okay, that sounds great. If you're pro-life, then that means you believe human beings are created in the image of God, that there is a sanctity to that life. There's a sacredness to that life, and that life should be protected. And I say amen to that. I believe that we're creating the image of God. I believe there's a sacredness to life. That life is there's a sanctity to human life, and we should protect it. And we should not want the killing and the murder of human beings. That we should stand against that. That's a theological perspective as it relates to human beings. Yes, human beings are depraved, but even in that depravity, were created in the image of God, and that image of God is still there, still retained, even though the depravity of man obviously, messes that all up. And so we don't reflect the image of God correctly in certain aspects, but we are still creating the image of God, and therefore human life has sacredness, a sanctity to it. And that's why even after the flood, God reestablishes that if you take the life of a human being, your life should be taken. All right, that he gave that principle early on in the book of Genesis. Even after the fall, even after the flood, even after the wickedness of human beings, still that there's something about being created in the image of God that gives a sanctity to human life. Now, I think that worldview only comes from believing in a creator and that we're creating the image of God. If we are just evolved animals, then is there any sanctity to that life? Is there any sacredness to that life? And I think that's an important question to ask people who reject God but still want to argue that, hey, we can't treat people this way and we can't treat people that way. Well, what gives any dignity to human beings? Why do we care about how people are treated? I think that's an important concept to bring up. But here's the thing that always baffles me. The people who yell and scream that we have to vote for people, and the sole reason we vote for people is their view on abortion. So they scream that they're pro-life. Well, what is your view when it comes to issues related to, subjects like war and our foreign policy and let's say our country invading a country, resulting in the death of a whole lot of people under the idea that they possessed weapons of mass destruction that they did not? And then we stay there for a prolonged period of time and more dying and we completely, create an upheaval within the country and, basically, dividing the country, and people are killing and our soldiers are being killed, and it just turns into an absolute mess. What do we believe about that? What do we believe about invading a country because they're partially responsible for training terrorists that attacked our country, and then we stay there not 1 year, not 2 years, not 3 years, not 4 years, not 5 years, not 6 years, not 7 years, not 8 years, year after year after year, where there's dying and killing and fighting? Do we support that? Now, how does your pro-life view fit into the subject of war? Like you've got to be consistent there. You've got to be concerned about that. Like, when should you fight and when should you not fight? When do you support war? When do you not support war? This raises questions about the just war doctrine. That I tend to lean towards that view of war, the just war doctrine. There are times war is justified, but it has to meet very, very, very specific criteria before I can say I support this war. And don't sit there and attack me or email me saying you're not patriotic. I served in the military, so don't sit there and attack my patriotism. Don't do that. Even though I was in the military, there were times I was not as supporting some of our military activities. I was like, I don't know about this. This is not very good. In fact, I was a very, very, very loud and outspoken that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I was 100% convinced there were no weapons there. I had no idea what we were doing, and I thought it violated the just war doctrine. And I was not in support of our actions there, and thought it was crazy and foolish, and it resulted in the death of a whole lot of people, depending on which statistics you go by. A lot of people died because of our actions there. So what I'm trying to say is, just when you say you're pro-life, you have to extend that beyond just a child in the womb. If you're pro-life, that pro-life view has to extend to after the baby is born, okay? We can't just say, I support life in the womb, but after the womb, not so much. I support all kinds of things that don't protect life and that results in the destruction of human life. So you have to expand that view to incorporate everything. But sometimes people just, abortion, that's it. Abortion. Okay, well, wonderful. This person is against abortion, but their foreign policy and their military doctrine seems to want to engage in war every time we turn around, and that's going to result in the death of all kinds of people. So is that a pro-life stance? I just think we have to be able to think about all of the issues. I think reducing things to just one issue is sometimes kind of a foolish perspective. In many cases, I think it makes us look inconsistent in our, core beliefs. Again, if one of your core beliefs is you're against abortion because you believe you're pro-life and you believe in the sanctity of human life, you've got to extend that to after the baby is born and supporting ideas and policies that also protect and view life as being sacred. So I think that I always find it interesting when you mention one topic, everyone will get upset and go, yeah, that's the topic we're upset about. And then you mention another topic and people are like, whatever, who cares? And you're like, wait, why wouldn't you care? This seems like a pretty significant story. So I think this story that I received the news alert about is significant. Nobody else seems to care. And again, I don't even know how real the threat is. But I thought I would at least turn on the microphone today and mention it, and then you can do your own research. And to be fair, this threat that I'm getting ready to tell you about has been an ongoing concern for a lot of people for a lot of years. And sometimes it gets a lot of media attention, and then sometimes the media doesn't care. And I will argue that right now, especially here in the United States of America, they don't care about anything other than the election. I mean, the election is like, that's the coverage. Everything has to come back to the presidential election. Everything's about Trump. Everything's about Biden. And it's like, this is all we can care about. Well, I just want to make sure everyone understands. While we're sitting here worrying about what's going to happen in the presidential election, there's still a big world around us, okay? We live on we live in this world, and the world is made up of more than just the United States of America. And there are more things going on in the world than just the presidential election. And we can become so focused on that we are ignoring developments and things happening around us. So I want to bring this to everyone's attention because there's a good chance you haven't heard a word about this. There's a good chance you probably didn't even know anything was developing. However, if you do a little bit of searching, you can find that there is a growing concern, it seems, from a number of sources about some developments. So I'm going to bring this to your attention. You can do your own research and you can tell me if you think this is important or not. Here is the story, all right? This comes to me from the South China Morning Post. The South China Morning Post. Now, I know you're like, who reads the South China Morning Post? Well, if you don't know me, I have stated so many times that I believe that you should follow as many, especially for those living in the United States of America, you should follow as many news sources as you can that are not located and based here in the United States of America. Because if you only listen to the news that comes from America, you get kind of an American perspective. You either get a conservative American perspective or a liberal American perspective, which I hate about our news media as it is because it's so biased in so many different ways. But I like to listen to reports about what's happening in the other parts of the world from a non-American perspective, because American media either ignores what's happening in other parts of the world until it becomes a big deal, or their perspective sometimes really doesn't articulate exactly what is going on in a fair and clear way. All right. So I subscribe and follow as many news sources outside of the United States of America as I possibly can. So I get a news alert from the South China Morning Post. Here was the headline: Chinese military beefs up coastal forces as it prepares for possible invasion of Taiwan. And I'm like, well, wait. Now, there's been lots of discussion for a very long time about China invading Taiwan. So I just stopped and started thinking about it. Okay, I'm going to throw this out there. If, gigantic question marks, right? 30 question marks. If China was to invade Taiwan, if that was to occur, and I strongly say if, what would it mean for the rest of the world? What would it mean for us here in the United States of America? What would it mean? Would the United States of America get involved in a military action to defend Taiwan? Would we go there to try to repel Chinese forces to push them back? Now, remember when Saddam Hussein and Iraq invaded Kuwait? We went in to to stop that. Would we do the same here? And what would a military action look like? How bloody, how much human life would be lost? And then here's just a very important question. Which current presidential candidate? Would it be President Trump or Joe Biden, if he became President Biden? Who would be best to handle an issue like China invading Taiwan? Where does that even register on our possible concerns here in the United States of America? I think if you go to the average person on the street, hey, China is possibly preparing to invade Taiwan, I think the average American would be like, yeah, who cares? I don't care. Or they may even go, wait, Taiwan? Where's that? Okay, who knows? I don't know how the average American. I think from the people I sent this to, no one seemed to be that concerned about it. And one individual, I think, made a comment that demonstrated at least an awareness of the possible significance of it. But I think the 99% seemed not to even, there was no comment. So I don't know. Again, that doesn't prove anything. But I just think, is this not an issue that matters? Or is this something that we don't think will ever happen? Maybe it will never happen. Maybe. But let's listen. We won't listen. You'll listen to me read some of this report, all right? Here we go, all right? Chinese military beefs up coastal forces as it prepares for possible invasion of Taiwan. Now, again, I want you to know, that comes from the South China Morning Post. It doesn't come from Fox News, doesn't come from MSNBC, doesn't come from CNN, doesn't come from PBS, doesn't come from NPR. No, it comes from the South China Morning Post. That's why I gave it a little bit more that's why I give it a little bit more attention, all right? Here is some bullet points they have under the headline. Missile bases have been upgraded and equipped with the most advanced hypersonic missile, which is called the DF-17, according to one military source. Now, I'm assuming these military bases, and I'm just going to throw out some ideas here. I'm doing a lot of speculating here. I'm assuming these military bases get upgraded weapons, I don't know, yearly, every few years. So just because they're getting upgraded equipment and they're getting the most advanced hypersonic missile, the DF-17, does that mean they're getting ready to invade, or is just them upgrading all of their equipment? It could just be a possible upgrade. I don't know. Obviously, it was significant enough that it made it into the news story. Buildup of forces comes as the PLA continues with a series of exercises designed to keep up the pressure on the island. Now, the PLA, if I remember correctly, is the People's Liberation Army. I believe the PLA is the People's Liberation Army. I'll have to look in the story to see if they identify it, but I'm almost positive that's what that's referencing, right? So here is some more information. Beijing is stepping up the militarization of its southeast coast as it prepares for a possible invasion of Taiwan. Military observers and sources have said. Now, military observers, I need a little bit more information. They just observe the military? Are these people who have studied military action? Like, what are their credentials? It would be interesting to know exactly what's going on. Then the next little paragraph here is the People's Liberation Army. Okay, so I was correct. The People's Liberation Army has been upgrading its missile bases, and one Beijing-based military source says it has deployed its most advanced hypersonic missile, the DF-17, to the area. The DF-17 hypersonic missile will gradually replace the old DF-11s and the DF-15s that were deployed in the southeast region for decades. So see, these were missile bases that have been there for decades. They're just being upgraded. I don't know if that means an invasion is coming. It just sounds like a possible upgrade of equipment. But all right. The sources who requested to remain anonymous. Okay, I'm sorry. I was getting distracted because I just got a notification of a Victory Baptist Church going live on Spreaker. I'm like, well, I'm from Victory Baptist Church, and I've been live now for 20 minutes. So I guess that's a different Victory Baptist Church, right? So I was trying to figure out what was going on. So the source here that they have, let me go back and find this. So the sources requested to remain anonymous. All right, so anonymous sources, not a fan of that. But they requested to remain anonymous because of the sensitivity of the topic. The new missile has a long range and is able to hit targets more accurately. The DF-17, which has a maximum range of 1,550 miles, made its first public appearance on last year's October 1 National Day Parade to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Beijing regards Taiwan as a breakaway province, which it has vowed to take back by force if necessary. Now, they have vowed this for a very long time. So it's hard for me I don't have the perspective and the knowledge of that region enough to be able to say this proves it. It's getting ready to happen. I cannot say that. Relations between Beijing and Taipei, which is the capital of Taiwan, have deteriorated. So there's been problems developing now for a few years. This is kind of we can kind of trace this back to 2016. It appears when things really started kind of falling apart. The deployment of missiles on the coast. All right, so they're like these. Some of these things have kind of been developing over time. Ties have come under further strain this year as Taipei moved closer to the United States and assigned a series of arms deals, including for Patriot missiles and an upgrade to its F-16 Viper jets. So Taipei has been making arms deals with the United States of America. Obviously, China doesn't like this. China is beefing up their equipment. So right now, it could just be both sides beefing up and upgrading their equipment as a show of force. Doesn't necessarily mean that an invasion is underway, but it is something to continue to watch. And I'm looking here. They got satellite photos of some of the military bases here. And I'm going to go on down. They got a lot of information here. I was going to try to find a summary. Okay. Go back. All right. They got another story here. China warns Indian media not to call Taiwan a country. Internet reacts by calling it a country. Okay. Those are kind of things that happens all the time. And let's see here. I'm looking for... Beijing has sought to keep up the pressure on Taiwan with a series of exercises around the island, including a large-scale invasion drill last weekend and multiple air sorties that saw almost 40 fighters crossing the median line in the Taiwan Strait in a single day last month. Let's see. Until today, this is a retired major general who once led the mainland's semi-governmental organization for managing ties with Taiwan, described the recent exercises as unprecedented. He stated, and I quote, "Until today, the possibility of peaceful reunification was slim." He told Chinese news site, "The live-fire military exercises showed it's just one step away to actual combat." Now, that's a retired major general who is stating that. Now, I don't know. Again, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know. Again, this stuff has been discussed for a very long time. I thought, once I saw the headline, I'm like, okay, a lot of people should be talking about this. So I went to the BBC, watched hour after hour of their news, updates, their international news coverage. They didn't even mention China. Okay, nothing in regards to China and Taiwan. Sky News, nothing. A number of other sources, not a thing. I'll look to American news sources, not a thing. I subscribe to all kinds of news podcasts, and late last night, early this morning, I was listening to them. Not a mention. No one's even talking about it. It's not even on anyone's radar. And then this morning, I was listening to news talk radio on the way in. No one is talking about China. No, not a person. It was discussions about Hunter Biden. It was a discussion about campaigns and the upcoming debate, who's doing what, who's saying what, different polls about who's going to win, that Biden's up in the polls. There was discussions about, Twitter and Facebook and what they've been doing and what should be done about them. There's an antitrust suit, I think, being filed by the government against Google. What does that mean? Coronavirus was in the news, but not a thing about China. Nothing about China possibly invading Taiwan. Not a word was stated. So either that means this is an absolute non-story. We shouldn't even worry about it, or something is building, something is developing. There's some things happening, and then if something is to occur, then the rest of the world and everyone will scramble to catch up, going, wait, what happened? What's going on? Well, remember, there's tensions been going on for a very, very long time. All right, China sees Taiwan as this breakaway area that has refused to basically submit to China, and Taiwan. Everyone, they all have their perspectives, and we could go through the history and we could talk about it all. You can do some basic Google searching and at least get you a basic historical overview of what's been going on. But if it was to happen, that's the question I just want to ask. If it was to happen on everything else going on in 2020, everything else happening, coronavirus, election, economy, everything else that is happening, what would this mean for the world? What would this mean? What would it mean for the United States of America? Clearly, we've been selling arms to Taiwan. So do we end up in kind of a proxy war where China's going after Taiwan, Taiwan's fighting China, and then we're supplying all the weapons? Do we stay out of it as far as sending in troops, and we just let them fight this, and then other people may be helping China, people will help Taiwan. So you really have multiple countries involved. Two countries are fighting, and then everyone else is offering support of various kinds, whether it's weapons or information or strategy or people to advise. I don't know. I just think that if China was to invade Taiwan, it would have some pretty big ramifications. I was looking at some academic papers on possible ramifications for it briefly right before I went on the air, and none of them sound very good. Put it this way: at least the academic papers that have been written, and discussed probably in certain universities, they don't see it as being a good thing. Now they could be wrong; they could be completely. Let me stop right there. Obviously, it wouldn't be a good thing because people would die. I'm saying that it would not be a good thing in the sense that they are saying it could have global ramifications. It could impact all kinds of things. And then they start talking about why and how come, and they all have their theories. But I just thought I would bring it to your attention. You can do your own research or your own study. If you start researching and finding and keeping up with things about this, and you see some developments, feel free to email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Because typically the way it works is when you have a group of people who are working to keep up with something, we have a better job of really not missing anything. It's hard for me to just I could dedicate every waking hour to trying to follow this story, but obviously I can't. I've got other things to do. But other people out there helping, maybe you'll see something that I've missed, or maybe you have a lot of knowledge about this area, this ongoing tensions between China and Taiwan. This may be just a lot of talk, and obviously the last thing we want is a military conflict where people are going to die. We don't want that. And this reminds me just a little bit. Now, it's not the same because obviously there's a long history here, but when the situation started to deteriorate in Syria, way back years and years and years and years ago, back when I did the News in Focus program, I remember turning on the microphone, telling everyone, hey, the situation in Syria, it's a civil war. Nobody was calling it a civil war. And I remember receiving emails that I was an idiot and I didn't know what I was talking about. Well, go look at what happened in Syria. Yeah, it became a civil war. And look at all the different countries that were involved and different, Iran and everyone was trying, and Russia and all the different people were involved over there. So I just know sometimes when you turn on the microphone and you're kind of talking about something way before anyone else is, everyone acts like you're an idiot and everyone thinks you're foolish. And then sometimes then after everything then turns into a major problem, sometimes people will say, hey, you got that right. Sometimes people will not. But I'm not here to make any dire predictions. I just want to say, hey, there's a situation developing between China and Taiwan that seems to be taking a step in the wrong direction beyond what the tensions they typically have. So we should keep our eyes open. We should pray. We should pray for all the people in Taiwan, all the people in China. Pray for peace. Pray that this does not become another issue that we are dealing with in 2020, because we've had enough on our plate. I think we can say that, and I think we have more to come, depending on what's going to happen. America seems so distracted that I don't even know what is our foreign policy right now. Do we have a clear foreign policy? Can you even articulate what America's foreign policy is right now? Especially from a military perspective, what is our policy? We've had so many other issues to deal with. Do we have a clear doctrine? Do we have a clear idea of what we would do? These are questions that every person who votes should ask themselves. What is the military strategy and foreign policy of Joe Biden and of President Trump? And which one do you think is best moving forward into a world possibly where we could get a Chinese invasion of Taiwan? Which policy would work best? And just think of any other area in the world if there were ongoing, if a military situation arose. What's our policy towards it? What do we get involved or do we stay out? Do we adopt a policy that says, hey, it's your problem, you fight, and we're not getting involved, we're staying out? Or is our policy no, we get involved? Do we get involved to protect American interests? And how? Like, there's all kinds of questions. And if you think about it, right now, the way our politicians act, they come across to me more like little children on the playground who just want to argue and fight and say, you started it. No, you started it. You called me that. Well, if I'm that, what are you? Act like a bunch of kids. It sounds like our government is so divided and fighting amongst itself that I don't even know how aware our country even, from the outside, it appears that our country sometimes is not even paying attention to the possible developing situations happening around the world. All right. And you could argue, I'm just throwing out some random thoughts. President Trump tried some things with North Korea that previous presidents hadn't tried. Instead of fighting, he was trying negotiating. Instead of kind of an isolated kind of perspective, he tried to engage and tried to negotiate. Is that, I'm all for trying to negotiate and all trying to do what we can possibly do to avoid conflict, right? Let's work together. And especially with a global economy, the more we can have good relations with other countries, right? Hopefully, being able to work together, trade, economic, I think that can benefit everyone. So, how do you work that? I mean, President Trump seemed to kind of have the same kind of mindset with Russia. And you could argue all the reasons why. I know anytime he tried to say something nice about Russia, because he's under the control of Russia. I'm not here to get into all of those theories. I'm just saying Trump seemed to kind of have the idea of discussion, negotiation, relations more than fighting. And I think in some ways that I would kind of agree with some of that. I think we got to try to do what we can, because war right now is a lasting. I think war is something we definitely don't need currently in the United States of America or anywhere in the world, with all the things that are still currently. I mean, coronavirus is still a major issue for the planet, and then add military conflict during that. I don't know, but I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. I know it's a little off the beaten path. I have some scripture here that I was going to read, but I think I'll just leave that there, and then you can throw out your thoughts. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, to tell me what you think, right? Where do you see where we're going? Where are we headed? I mean, there's a lot coming our way, and we're going to see. And just think of any other areas around the world right now where there's some difficulties arising. We need to be paying attention to it, because guess what? It's not going to be very long that we're going to have either Trump remains in office or Joe Biden becomes president of the United States of America. And if that happens, we get a new administration, and it's probably important to start thinking about how they would address some of these issues. I wish we could get, some real questions asked at these so-called, quote unquote, a joke of what people call a debate. They're not actual debates. It's just like children. We can't get intelligent conversations from those who want to ultimately be in charge of our country, right? Be the president of the United States. It's just frightening that you cannot seem to get an intelligent, articulate discussion about real issues, other than them just throwing out their little talking points and their little, cliches, and just talking around issues instead of meeting issues head on, which is kind of to me, that's frightening that's where we have arrived as a country. And our politicians can't work together for what's best for the country. They fight for their own political position, their own political power. And that's a sad state of affairs. But the rest of us may want to pay attention to what's happening, what's going on in the rest of the world. And we may want to do so in a very thoughtful, logical, consistent way. And let's consider it. Let's pray about it. Let's be knowledgeable about it. And let's avoid conspiracies and wild-eyed speculation, but it is something we need to pay close attention to. All right, I'll stop right there. Everyone have a great day. I'll be back on the air here shortly. God bless.